I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's good. That's good. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to this wonderful September. It's not a date that is not without its issues, and there's both pros and cons to it. And so I'm just going to say September 11th, it's a day that we remember certain things. I don't want to remember the bad. I want to remember the good. And I don't want to continue to perpetuate a negative. That's just simply not wise, no matter who you are, whatever the circumstances are. So we want to be somebody who focuses on the positive and proactive and gives a good sense and a good meaning to this day. So I'd like to see that day sooner than later. Maybe it's the day of liberation. We don't even know about it yet. So regardless, welcome back. I've been traveling and I wanted to share some stuff because it was a really interesting trip. There was a lot of information exchanged. I learned a lot. I had some ahas and some breakthroughs. I got some great insights from Luis Casuga, who is the managing director of Niken Latin America, about our compensation plan. I want to share that with you. In fact, Ben would have done that for the launch partners call had he not fallen ill or actually got delayed at the doctor's office. So I made some notes to myself and to him. Let me just come back to them. Here we go. And the other thing that I wanted to share with you was what I gained from insights with the Royal Diamonds. I had a chance to meet with the top income earners in Latin America, in Mexico primarily, and Royal Diamonds, along with Luis and Gustavo, and Bo was there with me, and Ben popped in and out via Zoom. But what I gained was some interesting perspective I wanted to share with you because I was just so amazed. So let me start with that, if I may. First and foremost, these guys are just on fire. They're so exciting and they're so excited about their business. And I'm talking about the Royal Diamonds in Mexico primarily. That's where they live. But they were invited if they were part of the COI group. The COI group is the leading group in Latin America. That's headed up by Gloria Nava, who's a Royal Diamond. And you saw in the first quarter of this year how many new rank advancements they had when the compensation plan kicked in, because, of course, they have a business that's in full swing and in momentum. So when I sat down with these Royal Diamonds, the first thing we asked them to do before arriving in Mexico City was we gave them a list of questions that we wanted them to answer. One of the things that I couldn't believe was how serious they took those questions. They only had about 2 days notice of what the questions are, and they had total PowerPoints and Excel spreadsheets ready to deliver a meeting like they were talking to the CEO of General Motors or something. It was absolutely astounding to see the level of professionalism and the detail to which they operate their business. Some of them said many of these things they had in part because they operate their business a certain way. So I just wanted to share some of the highlights. They have goals, they set goals, and they share those goals with their team. It's a very, very active team sport in Latin America, this thing called Niken. Culturally, I sense that that's one of the distinctions of the Latin American market is they work really strongly as teams. And I know that that's the message that you've been hearing from me and Ben as we've interrelated with this group. But that's one of the most important things of all the things is this clear understanding that it's a team effort. And they treat this business very, very seriously. They operate a thing called the rhythm of the business. Imagine that. They actually operate it. In fact, it was so incredible to witness the extent to which the rhythm of the business has permeated their operation, that the company itself this year produced a calendar for 2017 that each consultant can buy. And when you open up the calendar, it's a double, it opens up and that's the whole month in a glance. The company events, which include webinars, etc., there's 2 or 3 events per month that are the corporate events. They're already printed in the calendar. So a person already has that information. And then on top of it, so the company has a whole plan for the year. Then on top of that, they overlay their business plan and the plan of their uplines where there may be some events that are important. One of the things, for instance, is a monthly event that's held, that's facilitated by the corporation, but not put on by the corporation. It's actually put on by the Royal Diamonds, working in collaboration, and they decide who's going to cover what content. It's a 3-hour webinar, and in order to get on this webinar, you have to be a gold. A gold consultant is allowed to be a satellite host to this webinar on the premise or the condition that they're hosting an event in their home or wherever for their team. So, and this is throughout Latin America. So what I thought was really cool about that was they were teaching golds to take responsibility for the birth of their team, to create a group and unit identity as a gold at that early stage, to recognize themselves as a team leader. And how that was being played out was that once you're a gold, you can register to be on this monthly call hosted by the Royal Diamonds, facilitated by Niken. And so it's very formal in that way, but you have to be a gold, and then you set up a team meeting for your group so they can come into your home. So what was neat about that was just a simple demonstration of how they work very effectively, collaboratively, to create a rhythm of the business and start recognizing the roles and responsibilities at the various ranks, such as gold. It didn't end there, but I just was so impressed with the fact that they keep score. One of the things that Gloria Nava does is on an annual basis, she hosts in January a major event, a recognition event for silvers and above who maintain qualifications 12 out of 12 months the previous year. So they maintain their rank qualification, their pay rank qualification. So silver has to do at least 4,000 points to every month in group volume in order to be qualified to attend this event. And it's a big event where they celebrate the entire day and recognize. And what she does is a presentation that she showed us, her last one, which actually has, I'm going to mute out somebody who's got some feedback. There it is. She keeps track of all of their volumes, their OV, what she refers to, the organizational volumes, and she shows the top leaders, the leaderboard in each of the ranks, and give special recognition to those people. So she pulls a genealogy report every single month, looks at the volume for each of those silvers, golds, platinums, diamonds, and Royal Diamonds, and then has a spreadsheet that tallies it and shows their annualized volumes. And it was really interesting because what it showed was the volume, the annualized volume of someone who attains a rank. So for instance, I think it was about 1 million points or something like that when they were doing diamond or Royal Diamond. I can't remember which one that was allocated to, but what was clear was if somebody was in a category just below, they could see how close they are to the next level to advance. A gold, how far they are from the advancement to a platinum rank, because they're seeing all the volumes of the platinums, the annualized volumes. And so it shows a person their standing, where their business is at, and what they need to do in the next year to move to the next rank. It really creates an incredible picture. But the emphasis is volume. That's the emphasis. And so they've been working with the idea of volume longer than us, because the compensation plan that went into effect in the Latin American market was very organized around volume before we made the transitions to that. We remember ours was rank oriented, break the ranks, and then you advance in rank. They were volume oriented, so they've always been operating that way. And of course, they measure that, and what you measure multiplies. And what you measure and recognize multiplies exponentially. So that's a big takeaway, is the acknowledgement that volume is something they pay close attention to. And one of the volumes that they pay a lot of attention to, and something that Gustavo Gomez shared with us, was the PGV volume. He showed us the graph over the years comparing Mexico with other markets, and there was a spike that took place in November. And he said, what we learned that took place that separated the graphics in Mexico from all the other countries was this is when they implemented what they implemented, causing people to do personal meetings, personal group meetings. So PGV meetings. So anybody who would be within your group. In other words, there was a direct correlation to the number of people hosting a meeting and the volume of the company. Well, that doesn't surprise you, does it? Especially those of you who are members of launch partners. The emphasis there, the goal there was what? For you to become a host. Now, what they're doing a little different is they're encouraging not hosting for the cross lines and everything, hosting your group, your personal group, because that's where your PGV volume comes from. And so they saw a huge trajectory increase in group volumes. And then, of course, with that comes all the advancements and so forth. So paying attention to volume, your organizational volume, paying attention to your PGV, measuring those numbers, looking at those numbers, and the correlation to roles and responsibilities. When somebody steps into the role of being a presenter for their team and being a team leader, that's when their business really starts to go and their volumes start to go. So I've kind of always known that built into a system called UCube back in the day was the second game board. The second game board was to be a team leader, and that started, we acknowledged that that was starting at the gold rank. So they have taken the science of Nikken and put it into full gear, full implementation. And so I'm very impressed with the results, as are most people. What else can I tell you? Just if you saw some of the presentations were an hour long, just walking us through the questions we asked them as they were showing us all the things that they measure, all the activities that they're engaged in. But what was really clear about it was they were deliberate. They weren't just promoters. They weren't just simply promoters promoting. And I said, I feel really at odds because I don't do half of the stuff these guys do. And yet they are very, very proficient and efficient at their business. They know what's going on in their business. They know who to work with. They work very closely with people and setting goals and setting targets. They show people when they're getting somebody started in the business, they'll take a product like the waterfall and they'll show them the money that you would earn selling a waterfall as an executive, and the money that you would earn selling a waterfall as a silver. And then they just say, which of these would you rather be when you're selling a waterfall? And what would they actually ask? What would you rather make, this or this? And so it's like, yeah, duh, hello, yes, silver would be the place to be. So that justifies the understanding of why silver is an important rank, because it's where you maximize your earnings for the same effort. So again, it's a simple thing, but it's a thing they do with consistency. All of them do this little exercise. Anyway, there's a lot more that I can share with you. There was something I want to switch gears on here, and that was with respect to the compensation plan. This didn't occur to me. And so this is a big one. This was the one that was like wow, I never realized that. In the compensation plan that we had in the past, I'm getting feedback, so I'm just going to mute. Okay. In the comp plan that we had in the past, building width represents what? Profitability, right? Building depth represents what? Security. So we're always pretty clear on that. Now, rank advancements, of course, were based on your ability to duplicate an advancement in rank on your first level. Now, what did that do? How did that create a behavior and a resultant? Well, the resultant was it took a long time to advance in rank because you were at the disposition of whoever you were working with. Moreover, that you had to really stay closely in a relationship, so you had strong bonds and strong ties, and as Luis would say, I mean, you got to know everything about everybody that you were working personally with, because that's the way the compensation plan led you. It led you to have strong ties, strong relationships with that person you enrolled, So that would lead you to have a slower advancement because you're dependent on that person. So how I usually overcome that was go wider, go wider, go wider. And that was often the lesson that you were taught, right? Go wider, go wider, go wider. Well, this new compensation plan, where does the leader have to be in order for you to advance in rank? And the answer is anywhere, because there doesn't really actually have to be a leader to advance in rank. It's totally volume driven. So you could drive a leg down and go down and go down. So you could sponsor somebody, help them sponsor somebody, help them sponsor somebody, help them sponsor somebody, help them sponsor somebody. All of that is volume. And remember, what they're measuring is volume. And so they'll go down until they find somebody who is exciting, interesting, and they can work with, and then they'll work and fan out that person. That's what we call a taproot in the business. And so sponsoring can be accelerated when you're driving a leg straight down rather than stopping with that person, setting up the whole scenario to go wide. You just go boom, boom. Who do you know? 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 And all of a sudden you can accelerate sponsoring. And so where we learn this from is companies that offer a binary system. In a binary system, and Nikken is not that, it's a hybrid, but they took the best of the binary system. In a binary system, typically you would say, hey, I'm going to enroll, let's say, D, I'm talking to you, and I see Jill just below you on my screen. So I'd say, hey, D, I've got somebody who I think I'm going to be enrolling tonight. She's a real target. She's a real shooter. She's going to go places. Maybe you want to jump in because I'm going to sponsor them, but I'll sponsor them under you. And their incentive plan is designed that way because you build one leg, and then if somebody's really interested in their business, what do they need to do to capitalize? They need to build the second leg. They do. So you just spend your time driving a leg down, building up volume, building up volume, building up volume. And then if there's anybody in there that has any intention of building, their job is to build a second leg. So you've done that once, you've done that twice, and so you're just driving legs straight down, creating the value add and the incentive for anybody along that line to jump in and start doing that themselves. Because there's no, the balance of those legs is how you get paid. So in Nikken, that element exists now. Now, there is incentive for you to drive a leg down and maybe even offer to let somebody get signed in under somebody else. Why? Doesn't matter where that person appears. Doesn't matter where that person appears. If you're going to work with them, you're going to work with them regardless. But if you're going to create interest, vested interest, as Dave Rolfe talks about, drive that leg straight down, you're creating volume. And so you could generate 6,000 points going straight down rather than straight across. Now, all those people in between have a reason to build a leg of their own, a second leg. You've created the vested interest. So it's an interesting strategy that I think we really need to consider, because what it essentially does is it takes away the idea of babysitting somebody until they become something, and you just create straight down vested interest, vested interest. Then if they're interested and they want to participate, it's on them rather than you trying to create a leader out of them. So it's a very different dynamic altogether. And it totally accelerates sponsoring. One of the things that we need to create a better emphasis on is sponsoring. And I don't think we understood this compensation plan to understand how it's driving, how it can drive sponsoring the way it's designed. Let's see, what else? Here's the other thing I want to share with you. I kept hearing this over and over again. People make important decisions based on emotions, right? Emotions. To get married. That's a pretty big decision in somebody's life. What's that based on? Mostly emotions, right? To quit a job. Again, mostly emotions. So the big decisions we make from emotions. So then the question then is, how do we make people feel at our events? whether it's a one-on-one, whether it's an in-home, whether it's a public event, are we giving them a lot of things to think about, which is intellectual, mental exercise, or are we giving them a lot of things to feel? Because that's where the emotions come in, and that's where the decisions come from. And I know a lot of our presentations, I'm guilty of it that myself, is really heady. A lot of our presentations are really designed to make an argument of something. It's an intellectual argument. And yet the decisions that people make are made emotionally, and then they justify them intellectually. So what would we need to do in order to increase the emotion that someone feels for enrollment? Now, and to be clear about that, I'm not talking about just the products. I'm talking about why would they get emotionally involved, or why would they get emotional based on what they're hearing and seeing about the business? What would you be talking about? What would you be sharing as a testimonial, for instance, as a lifestyle change, etc.? One of the things that came up was the fact that the millennials don't care about big cars and big houses, and they don't care about big money either. They want freedom. That's their highest priority. The ability to be flexible and free, which means to have enough to be free. And they don't necessarily fall into the traps of the big cars, the big houses, the big tickets. And so if you present Nikan from that perspective, you're not going to attract them. You will attract them, though, if you start talking about the freedom, the flexibility of your life, the things that you're able to do because this is the business you operate instead of a job and instead of a classical type business. So if you speak from an emotional perspective on why you're excited, and they can express and I'm talking about sharing this information with your team. Like, this is about having a real strategy meeting and saying, team, from now on, we're going to beef up our meetings, and here's how we're going to do it, so that the emotions are stronger in our meeting places. Now, if you go back in time, like I was thinking about this and thinking, when I first got involved in Nikan, the energy was extremely high in a meeting. And some of the stories were so profound that people would be in tears, literally crying. And they would get the whole room crying. Boy, those are emotions. And people make decisions based on emotions. So product sales were an easy thing to have happen because of that. And since those meetings encompassed both the products and the business, people would naturally tie that to the business. And so people enrolled. Of course, our methodology then was just enroll everybody so they could at least buy the products at a discount if the worst case scenario. So in today's situation, today's marketplace, how would you add emotion? And we can unmute, by the way, because this is an open call. You can unmute yourself if you have some ideas about this. But how can you add some emotion to your meeting so that that's what somebody comes away with? The decision that they make to get involved with you, with your teammates, with Nikan in a business is emotion-based. Like, let's even consider some crazy ideas, because no idea right now is crazy. We need some ideas is what we need to really stimulate our meetings and get them going in the right direction where that's concerned. So if you have some ideas, go ahead and unmute. Let's capture them. I'll give you one idea. Recognition. Recognition of achievements is a very big deal in Latin America. A very big deal. And all of those leaders that I was talking about, they all have their own recognition meetings on a monthly basis. Whether it's a breakfast meeting, team meeting, that's part of what they measure. They measure who they're going to recognize. So they're constantly scanning and looking for ways to recognize people in their business, on their teams, because that leads to that emotion that perpetuates and propels others forwards. Lori, I see you just came offline, or off mute. You have an idea?
Yes. I was ruined by you and Suzanne when you started talking to me and asking me about what if you were already there? What if you were already a royal diamond? What would your life look like? And the only thing that came to me was those emotions where I'm like, wow. And I started thinking about that. And I started thinking, wow, my life could be like this. That's where you're tapping into the emotions. That's where you're starting to feel it. That's when you start doing that daydreaming thing that we used to do when we were kids. And it changed the way we thought about things. And so when you start thinking about your dream, the why, you have to get to the why. That's where the emotions are. A friend of mine, she wants to open a bookstore. All I have to do is just say that, and you can see her whole countenance change, her whole countenance. And so that's that feeling of the why, the what would be different in your life. You know, sometimes Suzanne brings up balance. You know, what pillar? You know, what would it look like? How would it be different if you could change that pillar and you could be in balance? How would that look? And you start getting that feeling of hope and change, and that there is something in the future that might be different. And then that feeling's there, and then I'm ruined, or the other person's ruined. They start thinking about that. And you know, and then you can't go back from that.
That's so amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm saying this because we have a tendency in NICAN to be so overzealous about the products that almost every presentation ends up being about the products. And that's where the enthusiasm is. And so what we're really embellishing is why somebody might want to be a customer. But what Lori's presenting just now, that concept is so much bigger, because now it's about how the business can be a mechanism to fulfill a lifestyle need or another sense of purpose. And we've just got to amp up, I mean, seriously amp up our understanding that the business is the real product. Why? Because just look at what people become. Humans being more, just look at who they become because they pursue this interest that goes well beyond the product, the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of making a difference. And so the more we can express that, the more people are going to appreciate why this matters and why they might want to be part of this. Madeline?
Okay, Saturday we were one of the hosts for your event, and Elaine Connolly came. So she's an energy holistic therapist, and she brought a handout for us. She did a little post-conference, the cycle of success on the I am that she has, so I'll scan that and send that to you. But she said how to create a vision board, and then she had a blank piece of paper for everybody. And it was really interesting. When she was passing it, we missed one person, one of my old silvers, and she said, I want one. I want to make a new one. So what about having magazines in the back of the room? Because since we don't have the humans being more the way that it used to be, what Lori just mentioned was visualizing some of those dreams, or just have somebody pull theirs out and have that little exercise. It created an interest here.
You're giving me an idea, Madeline. You're giving me an idea. What about if you just had something as an in-home evening that you invited people, and that's what the goal was? You were going to give people a chance to be like little kids again and create a vision board. I mean, that was the purpose of your evening.
Yep.
So it wasn't about NICAN. It was about their dreams, their possibilities, and putting an exercise together where if they walk out of your house that night, they are so jacked up, they can't wait till the next meeting and who they're going to bring. And then there could be that follow-up meeting where it's all about how they can turn NICAN into a platform for creating a better quality life.
The other one she gave was that one page that you
read.
Day.
Yeah.
Right. Just a couple of handouts, some piece of it. So that I thought that was pretty good. So I like that idea.
I think that's really cool. Again, this is about how to create an emotional impact that the business becomes not a business per se, but a mechanism for the fulfillment of dreams. Any other ideas? Yes, Cheryl.
I was speaking with one of my new partners. She was away for the month of August, so we said we'd regroup in September once the kids were back in school. So I met with her today, And that's how I started the whole approach, because, you know, what I'd been doing previously wasn't working so well. So I just, you know, flipped everything on its head and have started this new vein. And that's the first thing I kind of went with, was vision. So we talked about her personal vision and her business vision. And her light bulbs went on when we spoke from that. And then I went on what the plan would be, what we would do now. But that's where I started it. I got that rooted into her. And it was amazing just to see the difference in her. The wheels were just started to really spin on what she wants to do. So I think, I think that's a great approach.
When you first saw this as a business vehicle, I'm pretty sure your wheels were spinning, because it's just this whole possibility. And now it's really how free you are to imagine something, because there was no limiting thing.
A few sleepless nights while the wheels continued to spin about the potential.
Yeah. And by the way, that's what I get when I know I hit the home run, is like I get a phone call. I didn't sleep at all last night. That's when I know I hit it out of the park. In fact, what's interesting is I had a sort of an encounter on the airplane coming back from Mexico City. The same gentleman who was sitting next to me on the flight out was on the flight back. And we had more to say about things on the way back, because we both shared a night in an earthquake. So that's how we kind of reacquainted ourselves. And anyway, I had lunch with him today. He was the one pushing the agenda, because he saw enough and heard enough that he wants to move things along. And guess what he does, by the way? He's a motivational speaker, a coach, personal development coach. He works with business to business. He works a large and small groups internationally. Colombia. He's Latino. He speaks very, very he's Spanish, and he was in Mexico City doing a 5-day workshop for 30 people in a group. So wouldn't that be a great prospect to have as a partner in this business? Here's a guy who's already familiar with what we do, just he's doing it in a different context. Put him in this, and, you know, sky's the limit. And that's what I kind of pointed out to him. As I said, you know, for the most part, you and I seem to be doing the same work. The difference is and I asked him, what happened? Do you still carry on with these people? Like, do you still have some sort of compensation or remuneration or any connection to them after you're done? He says, no, we just move on to the next one. I said, shame. That's the difference between you and I. I have feedback. The feedback is in the form of the income that I generate, that comes from the constant repeat and residual that is coming from the impact. So that might be, and that's what he said, that's what's exciting about your business model to me. And by the way, guess when the products came out? We had a 2-hour lunch.
At the end.
I showed him an insole at the end as I was giving him something to take home. That was it. Just say, you know, we actually do have a product here. I did a strength test using my my bracelet. That was it. So 2 hours, and finally I show him something. That tells you what the conversation wasn't about, and more importantly, what it was about. So, Suzanne.
A couple of things. One is, I remember as we're talking about our life cycle plans, there was a great brochure that I still have some of, that Team Diamond had, that showed a picture of a life cycle. And it said, you know, these are the things that, why I am doing this, and what would yours look like? And there was a blank page on the other side. So it created that conversation, to create that relationship.
Well, there's another great idea. How many of you have a life cycle plan? How about taking it? How about taking it to your next one-on-one?
I still carry mine with me and do that.
I mean, do you remember how you felt when you stood up at HBM and you had to share that? It was like being a little kid, and how excited everybody was. This is emotion. Emotion is what makes it all work, and makes it worthwhile, by the way.
I've done about 4 of them now. In fact, the one I just held up, I did last November.
Cool. So I'm seeing Suzanne, she's just given us a toolbox, blogs,
Oh,
original
sorry,
thinking.
that was so you could share. So I was looking up synonyms or for agent of change, and I found this article. So I don't know if you want to bring it up. I just sent it to you.
Did
Mike,
you email it to me?
no.
Yeah,
Here.
probably easier if you email it to me because I'm not sure what to do with it here.
I'll just put it there.
But everybody can copy it right now. If
yeah.
you're on this call, go ahead and scrape it, copy and paste it onto a Word document or somewhere in your email or something, so you have it and you can refer to it.
And it's a really interesting article because it talks about, let's see, what is a change agent? And it says there's 4 different explanations for how it feels to be a change agent. And one is a change agent lives in the future, not the present. They're fueled by passion and inspires passion in others. They have a strong ability to self-motivate, and they must understand people.
Fantastic. Wow. There you go. So that conversation from 2 weeks ago when I met with that lady in Winnipeg, that young girl in Winnipeg, and I talked about that. By the way, I've also been using that example quite a bit because I just find that every time I talk to somebody and they ask us about NICAN or network marketing, they ask us questions that have it in their mind a certain way and not exactly the way I see things. So I say, you've heard of McDonald's? What business is McDonald's in? Now, a lot of people have seen the movie recently, so it's probably a good thing to talk about. And sometimes they'll say, like the fellow today said, real estate. And I said, yeah. So, but if I asked a customer who was going to McDonald's restaurants regularly, what would he say? He'd say, well, they're in the hamburger, French fries, or they'd say the fast food business. If I asked the owner of that restaurant, that particular McDonald's franchise, what business is he in? He'd probably say, I'm in the restaurant business. So depending on who you're asking about the business will get you a different answer, even though we're talking about the same business. Similarly, in NICAN, people can look at NICAN and adopt it in a different way. Some people are just simply selling the product. And so the customers think, oh yeah, NICAN, isn't that the magnet company? Or isn't that the company that sells water filters? So that's their perspective on NICAN. You ask the person who sold them that water filter or that magnetic product, and that person might see themselves as a NICAN rep or salesperson. You ask the person who sponsored them, and that person might see themselves as a distributor who's sponsoring people. But the big picture here is the person who sees themselves as an agent of change. And that's that 5 pillars concept, the idea that what we're doing is we're helping people understand a concept of balance and integrating that into their life and then providing them means with which they can actually start to live it. That's an agent of change. And if they see it on a big scale, it's about shifting consciousness. It's about making a new movement in the world where there's a higher respect and appreciation for well-being and people taking care of themselves and helping others to do the same. So that's the big picture, right? We're still looking at NICAN, but we're looking at it from different points of view. And depending on the point of view that you look at it from determines how you're going to approach someone. And so a lot of the work that I've been doing in since the convention where we introduced the tools, is to shift the focus to the bigger picture, a bigger context, so that NICAN becomes a means to an end and not an end in itself. The products are not the end. They're products, they're a means to an end. People don't want a magnet. They don't want a water filter. What do they want? They want clean water. They want energy. They want vitality. Oh, and here's one other thing I learned I want to make a big emphasis on, because I just saw an email come to me about an agenda or just somebody who was interviewed today, and it talked about a pain management specialist or whatever. The younger generation cannot and will not relate to the word pain. It doesn't exist in their vocabulary. They don't know what you're talking about. They don't care about that. It doesn't interest them. If you profile successful network marketing companies that are in growth right now, they don't talk about pain. They don't talk about pain relief. They talk about what people want. They want energy. Energy is a big word for the young generation. Energy, vitality, mobility, freedom, flexibility, mostly energy. So if we stop as a matter of point using the word pain, even in our own testimonies, even though that's where we got our start, we will find ourselves attracting a whole new generation of people who can relate to those words.
Another word that Bernadette used was income rather than business. And we've been talking a lot about this because everybody's so busy. And, you know, if you mention another business, they don't want to hear about another business. They don't fit something else in. So I think the fun thing, because they're so busy, you know, so connecting those 2 points really makes sense. And I hear us, those of us that kind of talk to one another in between or on other calls, Platinum Alliance and so forth, that seems to be what we're struggling for. So this is my aha for tonight, connecting the fun and the time freedom and the energy and an extra income stream rather than another business opportunity until they're engaged and further along in the process to understand what that may take.
Absolutely, Madeline. What you're referring to is what is the gig economy. The gig economy is not about actually having another business. It's about having an income stream. Maggie's point here, in my observation, the world is thirsty for a few key things: purpose, vitality, community, recognition, and fun. That's what we offer. So if you rephrase or reposition Nikken, it will become something that the next generation finds interesting, because clearly we have attracted or have not attracted the next generation for what it has been presented as. And that is not food for their interests. But what they are interested in is freedom. They're interested in income. They're interested in lifestyle. They're interested in energy. So if these are the things that we talk about, so for instance, in the case of my back pain or whatever, I could easily say, I mean, I just couldn't do the simplest of things, walking, running, sitting, everything was really problematic for me. But the second I started using these products, I had more energy than I knew what to do with. Wow, that's a big different way of saying I didn't have pain anymore. I didn't have to go to the physiotherapist and the chiropractor. So you want to really just hit the home run and talk to people where they can relate.
Now, what's nice, Michael, is that even though Mike DiMuccio could change his story, not just the rest of us. So that's encouraging here tonight.
Absolutely. Let me tell you something. I got so much out of that trip. And just to put the exclamation mark, got a good shaking in my bed as well. That was a freaky experience. That's the second time I've been in an earthquake. And I tell you, it's not fun when it's happening.
I remember you in the first time. For the others here, I was on the ground floor from the 10th floor down when we were in California. And the biggest excitement of that earthquake was seeing Mike DiMuccio in his white bathrobe, not in his tie on that stage.
Yeah, well, okay. Nobody saw me in a bathrobe this time. I actually got dressed. Anyways, okay, we're up for tonight. Something to digest, I think, really, to pay attention to this call and digest it. We'll resume next week and carry on. Maybe you can bring some feedback to what you've integrated and how that's worked for you. So thanks, everybody, for joining. We'll see you next week. Cheers.